There are 7 specific English rules separating advanced speakers from beginners. Language schools know these rules but hide them from every curriculum. Most students study English for years and still feel completely stuck. That frustration isn't their fault. The system was never designed to help. If someone wants to finally speak English with real confidence and power, subscribing to English Made Easy right now is the smartest move. This channel reveals what classrooms refuse to teach their paying students. Rule number 1 will shock even people who've studied English for decades. Most students believe grammar perfection is the key to fluency in English. They correct every sentence obsessively and freeze before completing even one thought. Native speakers, however, make grammatical errors constantly during natural daily conversation. Linguists at Oxford recorded native speakers and found something absolutely remarkable recently. Fluent speakers prioritize communication speed over grammatical accuracy in almost every situation. Schools, however, grade students down for doing the exact same natural thing. This creates a mental block that stops real fluency from ever developing. The fear of making mistakes becomes more dangerous than the mistakes themselves. Research from Cambridge University confirmed that overcorrection kills spoken fluency very effectively. Students who allow themselves small errors actually progress 3 times faster overall. The brain needs permission to experiment before it can truly master anything. Rule number 1 is this: stop chasing perfection and start chasing communication. Fluency lives on the other side of the fear of being wrong. Nobody teaches this in school because mistakes look bad on official test scores. But real life doesn't grade conversations. Real life rewards people who communicate clearly. Here is something even more surprising that most English students never discover. The word literally has officially changed its meaning in standard modern English dictionaries. Merriam-Webster now accepts literally as an intensifier, even when used figuratively today. Schools still mark this usage wrong, teaching a rule that no longer exists. Language is alive, it changes constantly, and textbooks are always running far behind. Rule number 2 is about something called natural word order in spoken English. In classrooms, students learn to build sentences slowly, piece by piece, very carefully. Subject, then verb, then object. The standard formula taught in every single school. But native speakers constantly flip this structure using something called fronting and inversion. That movie? Absolutely loved it. Is something a fluent English speaker says naturally. Schools would mark that sentence wrong because the subject appears to be missing entirely. But every native speaker instantly understands it and uses this structure all the time. Fronting allows speakers to emphasize the most important part of any thought immediately. It creates natural rhythm and makes spoken English sound fluid rather than robotic always. Students who learn fronting suddenly sound dramatically more natural within just a few weeks. Yet this structure never appears in standard English textbooks used in schools worldwide. Rule number 3 involves something called lexical chunks, and this one genuinely changes everything. For years, students have been taught to learn individual vocabulary words one at a time. They memorize happy, quickly, beautiful, single words collected like stamps in a book. But the human brain doesn't actually process language as individual disconnected words at all. Research from the University of Nottingham revealed something that completely changed modern linguistics forever. Native speakers store and retrieve language in chunks, fixed multi-word phrases used automatically. Phrases like, to be honest, at the end of the day, make up your mind. These chunks come out instantly without the brain constructing grammar rules in real time. Students who learn chunks instead of single words improve their fluency speed by 60%. That statistic comes from a 2019 language acquisition study published in a peer-reviewed journal. Schools still teach word lists because chunks are harder to test on standardized examinations. But the testing system serves the school. It was never designed to serve the student. Rule number 4 is something that causes arguments even among professional English teachers worldwide. It involves prepositions, those tiny words like on, in, at, by, and for. Every student has been told prepositions follow strict, logical, learnable rules in English grammar. This is, without question, one of the greatest lies ever told in language education. Prepositions in English are largely idiomatic, meaning they are learned through exposure, not logic. There is no rule explaining why someone says interested in, but good at correctly. Nobody says interested at or good in, but no grammar rule actually explains this difference. Native speakers know these combinations because they heard them thousands of times during childhood. The only way to master prepositions is through massive repeated exposure to real, authentic English. Students who read and listen extensively master prepositions far faster than those studying rules. This is why heavy readers always sound more natural than heavy grammar studiers do consistently. Rule number 5 connects directly to something most students feel but cannot quite identify. There is a specific rhythm to English that schools almost never directly address or teach. English is a stress-timed language, meaning stressed syllables occur at roughly regular intervals always. Languages like Spanish or French are syllable-timed. Every syllable gets approximately equal time duration. When non-native speakers apply syllable timing to English, something instantly sounds off to listeners. Native speakers can't always explain why it sounds wrong. They just feel it immediately. The issue isn't vocabulary or grammar. It's the invisible musical rhythm underneath every sentence. This rhythm is called English prosody, and it governs stress, pitch, and sentence level timing. Research shows that learners who study prosody improve their listening comprehension scores by 45%. They also report that native speakers suddenly understand them much more easily after prosody training. Yet prosody receives almost zero classroom time in standard English education programs worldwide today. Schools focus entirely on what words students use, never on how those words actually sound. And this is exactly why so many fluent readers still struggle enormously in real conversations. The gap between reading English and speaking English is not about vocabulary size at all. It is almost entirely about rhythm, stress, and the music hidden inside every single sentence. And the 3 rules still remaining are even more surprising than everything covered so far. Most students have no idea that 3 powerful rules still remain completely unrevealed. These final rules are the ones that genuinely separate good English from exceptional English. Rule number 6 involves something linguists call discourse markers, and they are absolutely everywhere. Native speakers use discourse markers constantly, yet students almost never learn them in classrooms. Words and phrases like, well, not right, I mean, you know, and actually are discourse markers. These tiny expressions control the flow and tone of every natural English conversation expertly. They signal hesitation, emphasis, agreement, surprise, or a shift in conversational direction instantly. When someone says, well, actually before a sentence, the entire meaning shifts dramatically and immediately. Students who omit discourse markers sound overly formal, robotic, and unnatural to native speakers. Research from Lancaster University analyzed thousands of hours of real native English conversations carefully. Discourse markers appeared in over 85% of all natural spoken sentences recorded in that study. Yet, standard English textbooks dedicate an average of less than 2 pages to this topic. 2 pages for something that appears in 85% of every real conversation native speakers have. That imbalance alone explains why classroom English and real-world English feel like completely different languages. Students who deliberately practice discourse markers report sounding instantly more natural within days consistently. The brain recognizes these patterns because they signal authenticity, and listeners respond to authenticity powerfully. Rule number 7 is the final rule, and it may be the most important one yet. This rule involves something called approximation, and almost no English teacher ever addresses it directly. Approximation means intentionally using close enough language rather than searching for the perfect exact word. Native speakers do this constantly. They use vague language as a powerful communication strategy always. Phrases like sort of, like kind of, roughly, something like that, and around are approximators. When someone doesn't know a precise word, native speakers never freeze, panic, or go silent. They approximate, they describe, they gesture verbally, and they keep the conversation moving forward confidently. Students, however, are trained to find the exact correct word before speaking even one syllable. This training creates dangerous silence, the kind that kills confidence and destroys conversational momentum instantly. A 2021 study from the Applied Linguistics Journal confirmed something that completely reframes fluency education forever. Fluent speakers use approximation not because their vocabulary is weak, but because it saves vital time. Approximation is a strategic tool used by intelligent, confident communicators across every language on Earth. Students who learn to approximate deliberately become dramatically more conversational within just a few short weeks. This is the rule that unlocks speaking confidence faster than any vocabulary list ever possibly could. Now, here is where everything gets even more interesting and directly relevant to daily English use. These 7 rules all share one deeply important thing that most students have completely overlooked always. None of them are about memorizing more content. They are all about changing fundamental communication behavior. Fluency is never a knowledge problem. It is always a habit and behavior transformation problem. This is why students with smaller vocabularies often speak more fluently than students with larger ones. The confident speaker with 2,000 words beats the silent perfectionist with 10,000 words every single time. Real communication rewards courage, approximation, rhythm, and natural patterns far more than grammatical precision ever does. This understanding completely changes how someone should approach every single English learning session from now on. Instead of adding more grammar rules, learners should focus on internalizing these 7 behavioral communication shifts. Each rule is a behavior change, And behavior change requires practice, not just passive reading or studying. Here is another fact that most people studying English have never once been told honestly. The average native English speaker uses only about 3,000 words in their everyday normal conversations. That number comes directly from research published by the British National Corpus Language Research Database. Students chasing vocabulary lists of 10,000 or 20,000 words are solving a problem that doesn't exist. The real gaps are rhythm, chunking, discourse markers, approximation, and the freedom to make honest mistakes. These gaps are invisible in textbooks, but immediately obvious in every single real-world conversation happening today. Closing these gaps is what transforms a textbook English speaker into a real-world English communicator permanently. And closing them requires exposure to real English, not more grammar exercises completed alone in silence. Podcasts, films, conversations, and authentic listening material are more powerful than any structured classroom lesson today. Stephen Krashen's input hypothesis, one of the most cited theories in all of linguistics, confirms this. Krashen argued that language acquisition happens through comprehensible input, not through explicit grammar instruction at all. Decades of research support his position, yet classrooms worldwide still prioritize grammar drills over authentic exposure daily. Students who spend 1 hour listening to natural English daily outperform those doing 3 hours of grammar study. That is not an opinion. It is a conclusion supported by decades of reproducible language acquisition research. This is perhaps the most practical, immediately actionable insight that any English learner can take today. Replace one grammar session every day with 30 minutes of real, natural, authentic English listening content. The improvement in fluency, confidence, and natural rhythm will become noticeable within just a few weeks. Now consider something that reveals just how deeply the traditional system has misled generations of students globally. The TOEFL and IELTS exams test a version of English that native speakers themselves would partially fail. Academic English tested in those exams differs significantly from the English used in real professional environments daily. Many students pass these exams with high scores and still cannot navigate a simple workplace conversation confidently. This is not a failure of the student. It is a structural failure of the testing system itself. The good news is that once someone understands these 7 hidden rules, everything begins changing rapidly. Progress that felt impossible for years starts happening naturally and consistently within just a matter of weeks. The brain finally starts connecting classroom English knowledge to real-world English communication ability and confidence permanently. Discourse markers start appearing naturally in speech without conscious effort or deliberate thinking during conversations. Lexical chunks start flowing out automatically because the brain has finally learned to store language correctly. Rhythm and prosody start feeling natural because the ear has finally been trained to hear them. Approximation removes the fear of silence because there is always a way to keep speaking confidently forward. And the obsession with perfection quietly disappears because communication, not correctness, becomes the true North Star always. These 7 rules were never secrets because they were too advanced or too complex for students. They were hidden because the current system profits more from keeping students learning than from making them fluent. Understanding that truth is itself a form of freedom that every serious English learner absolutely deserves immediately. The students who find this information and apply it consistently will separate themselves from the majority permanently. They will sound natural, communicate confidently, and connect with people in ways grammar textbooks could never teach. If this content opens something new and genuinely useful, subscribing to English Made Easy is the next step. Every video on this channel delivers the real, hidden, practical knowledge that classrooms consistently fail to provide. Drop a comment below sharing which of these 7 rules surprised or shocked the most today, honestly. That comment might be exactly what another struggling English learner needs to finally see and believe completely. Subscribe to English Spark Easy, because fluency was never about rules, it was always about truth.